I'm pleased now to introduce Michael Veltri, Peak Performance Keynote speaker and the author of The Mushin Way. Please welcome Michael.
So seeing all of these billboards in Times Square remind me that we are all walking billboards advertising every single decision we've made in our lives. What you see before you are a culmination of all the decisions I've made in my life. And this reminds me of a time when I was in the Marine Corps and I had a very important decision to make. You see, I was holding a live hand grenade and I forgot what to do. I couldn't remember if it was thumb clip, pull pin, or pull pin, thumb clip. But I was standing there holding a live hand grenade. Now, somehow I did manage to rip the pin out, and it's go time. You cannot put the pin back in. I've got 30 of my Marine buddies watching to see if I'm going to screw this up. I've got a Marine drill instructor right in my face, purposefully screaming at me, causing fear, confusion, distracting me. And I've got a big decision to make here. 3 choices. Choice number 1, I make a good decision and throw the thing. But like every good decision, it has to be executed properly. Because what good is it if I don't throw it far enough, or at the right time, or in the right direction? Option number 2, I'm so overwhelmed by my fear. I am holding a live hand grenade. Or my ego. I don't want to look bad in front of my Marine buddies. My fear and ego shackle me, and I make a bad decision, dropping the hand grenade, killing myself, killing and injuring my Marine buddies. And then there's always a third option, where I choose to neither make a good decision and throw the hand grenade, nor make a bad decision and drop it, get it over with. But I choose to make no decision and hold on to that hand grenade for the rest of my life. So let me ask you, how many of your decisions in your business and personal life are like that? Okay, let me get rid of this grenade. Now, I certainly hope that you're not holding and throwing live hand grenades, but we are all faced with hand grenade decisions in our lives where we have to hold it, drop it, or throw it. And we are all fighting a losing battle against distractions that you may or may not even realize you're fighting. And this is preventing us from the clarity we need to make the right decision at the right time, especially when the pace is fast, the stakes are high, and the outcome unclear. And in today's 24/7, 365 hyper-connected world that we all live in, it's not getting any slower. As a matter of fact, I want to share some startling statistics with you that show the losing battle against distractions as I see some of you right now. On average, how many times a day do you think you look at your smartphone? These are professionals, not kids, professionals. On average, how many times a day do you think? On average, you'll look at 150 distracting times a day. Some people, professionals, not the kids, will look at it upwards of 1,000 distracting times per day. Some of you didn't hear that because you were looking at your phone. Professionals like yourself with a smartphone are connected to your office. 70% of you are connected to the office 13 and a half hours per day. That means the very first thing you see when you wake up in the morning is your work emails, text messages, calendar items. Be honest, who this morning woke up with their smartphone alarm? Yeah? And the last thing you're going to see before going to bed are your work emails, text message, calendar items. The business world, our lives are not set up to create clarity. Quite the opposite, in fact. Most of us, most of the time, live our lives backed into a corner, surrounded and outnumbered by email, text messages, social media posts, phone messages, personal obligations, professional obligations. There's pure distraction pinging at us from our many electronic devices. Count them with me. We have smart phones, smart watches, smart cars, smart TVs, smart homes, smart appliances. Do you guys really want to get a distracting text message from your refrigerator telling you to clean it? Eh? There's economic pressure telling us that our jobs aren't safe, that we haven't saved enough for retirement. And there is the constant pressure to do more with less at both work and home. How can we? How can we make the best decisions possible when we are faced with those hand grenade decisions in our lives under those conditions? The Japanese have a word. They have a concept called mushin. And this word literally translates to no mind. Think of it as no distractions or clarity. And this concept of mushin was developed hundreds of years ago on the feudal battlefields when the samurai warriors fought to the death with razor-sharp samurai swords, and life and death was decided in milliseconds. The samurai warriors couldn't be distracted. Practicing mushin, clearing the mind, allows the mind to be clear and reflective, free of excessive fear. Doesn't mean that you're not afraid. I was afraid in the Marine Corps. I'm a little afraid up here, but I don't let my fear shackle me. I don't let my fear petrify me. You're free of ego, excessive ego. It's okay to have an ego, but when the ego corrupts us, it prevents us from the clarity we need. You're able to see each situation clearly for what it is, free from the shackles of fear and ego, guilt and obligation, and you're able to make the right choice at the right time all the time. That's the practice of mushin. That is the clarity of the warrior. And whether you're doing battle in the boardroom or battle at home, we are constantly fighting that losing distraction against a battle against distractions. Practicing mushin will allow you to get that clarity so you can see my mushin way pearl of wisdom, which is when you're faced with those hand grenade decisions and you think it's hopeless, just because you can't see them doesn't mean that you don't have great decisions. They're always there. That losing battle against distractions that you don't even know you're fighting, your fear and ego prevents you from seeing that you always have great decisions. Now, I'd like you all to pause and think right now. What is one decision in your personal or professional life that you're putting off making because you don't think you have a good choice? What's one hand grenade decision you're holding on to? Maybe it's a little hand grenade decision. Where do I go in Manhattan once the event's over? Do I go out with my boss? Do I network? Do I go to Brooklyn and have a drink? Or maybe it's a big hand grenade decision, like Claire Shipman talked about earlier. You need to take on a big promotion at work and a relocation. What's one decision you're putting off making because you don't think you have a good choice? That's your fear and ego talking. Practicing the mushin way, and it is a practice, allows us to see that we always have good choices. Now, I achieved a level of mushin, I achieved a level of clarity the hard way. I got cancer. I had never been sick a day in my life when I found the lump. So it turns out I had testicular cancer. I had emergency surgery to remove my right testicle, but we caught it early. Everything was good. There was no spread into my lymph nodes. I just needed intensive observation, which was blood tests and CAT scans to ensure I was cancer-free. 6 months went by, blood test, CAT scans, blood test, CAT scans. I got this beat, looking good. And then I got that bone-chilling message from my oncologist. Hey, Michael, we have to talk. The cancer spread to your lungs. And I'm sure all of us here have an experience with cancer, friends or family members. Some have won their battle against cancer, others have not. All cancer treatments are different. In my case, I had a very aggressive form of cancer that had metastasized to my lungs, and I needed a very aggressive form of chemotherapy, which required me to undergo treatment Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. until 2 p.m. for 3 months. And everything you hear about chemotherapy is true. Your hair falls out. I became unnaturally thin, and your skin takes on a gray pallor. You're literally dying from the inside out. And I got through those 3 months because I didn't have a choice. There was no remission with the type of cancer I had. You either died or you did not. After that, I had one more procedure to go to be cancer-free, and that was surgery. Surgery to remove half of my left lung where those dead tumors resided, and it was a success. I was restricted to a wheelchair because I didn't have the lung capacity to walk. A few months later, I was able to walk. A few months later, I was able to go for a run. A few years later, I ran my first marathon on 1.5 lungs as a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society. Thank you. And the reason I'm sharing that story with you is that going into cancer, if I didn't think I had good choices, why even bother? Lay down and die. It took a life-threatening illness like cancer for me to realize you always have good choices. Everything else is easy. And you guys don't have to suffer the same way I did to realize that you always have good choices. You've got to win that losing battle against distractions. And in the short amount of time today, I can't give you every tool and technique to win that battle. Start by putting down those cell phones. Realizing that you're even fighting the battle against distractions is a step in the right direction. Practice not letting your fear and ego shackle you, and realize that you always have good decisions. I don't care what it is. So every time you're faced with a hand grenade decision, you're not holding on to it. You're throwing it effortlessly. You can juggle those hand grenades, throw them every time. And that is the power. That is the promise. That is my pearl of wisdom called the Mushin Way. Now, before I introduce the next speaker, I do want to thank Maria Brennan for inviting me up on her stage. And I also really do want to give a huge acknowledgement to the amazing support staff that makes it possible for us to be on stage and to enjoy these speakers. All of the WICT staff was amazing. I worked with 3 women that I really want to acknowledge. Joanna Dees, Megan Marksberry, and Joe Martin have been a huge help. So please join me in giving them a quick round of applause. Thank you.